Welcome to another episode of Strictly Education. I am your host, Dr. Tahira. In today's episode of Strictly Education, we will discuss the mental health crisis among our young people. Yes, it is called a crisis. Did you know that 1 in 6 children aged 10 through 17 will face a mental health crisis? Did you also know that suicide is the second leading cause of death among children aged 10 through 17? I have the honor of sitting with a mental health specialist today by the name of Kate Berg. So please sit back and take it all in today on Strictly Education. So Strictly Education is so lucky to sit with the Kate Berg. I only hear about you on LinkedIn. I've seen you, you're like a rock star, just FYI.
Thank you.
And the way Kurt speaks about you, it really is an honor to have you on the show. You are a program director for School Injustice Initiatives. I've never heard that title. I didn't even know there is any type of initiative that thinks about school injustices, and you do this work through the American Psychiatric Association Foundation. What does that mean?
Yeah, it's incredible, actually. So I came across the job on LinkedIn and was immediately intrigued because for me, it really met all of my professional ideals in one, and didn't even believe it was a real, like I said, I'd never heard of it. Like you said, I'd never heard of it. I clicked on the job and saw that it was in Washington, D.C. I was currently living in Denver, and I thought, oh, that's cool, but that's not for me.
Okay.
X'd out. But they contacted me, and I said, I'm gonna go for it with this interview and see what happens. I ended up getting the job, and there was no way that I could turn down this opportunity. So I moved to DC in January.
You moved to DC in January.
I moved to DC. I sold my house because, and let me tell you, I'm not in my early stages of my career. I never thought I would be in, hustle and bustle DC trying to do education things, but it was so important to me, the intersections of the two, that I just had to. And so in January, I moved to DC.
So that's pretty awesome. So you were an educator. You were in the schools. You were a guidance counselor. Is that what they're called today? They're called school counselors.
Yeah, it kind of depends on where you are, but essentially, yes, they're the same.
So you were working directly with students and teachers and families, and then you kind of veered off in a different direction. Why?
Oh my gosh, such a great question. I mean, I knew originally that I was very interested in at that time working with the quote unquote at-risk youth, because I was an at-risk youth myself. I really struggled in my teenage years with some mental health struggles, depression. I was bullied, and I had some experiences with the teachers in my life that weren't so positive. And I remember kind of rallying back. I went to summer school, night school. I ended up graduating on time, and I ended up moving forward and going to Florida State. And I remember thinking, if that is just a tenth of what some of these young people are experiencing, I have to do something about it. So when I went to Florida State, I immediately entered into the psychology courses, the child development courses, and I was very intrigued by all of that. And the course stayed in that. And when I graduated, I thought, what can I do with this degree in psychology? I really loved the idea of working with youth in schools.
Yeah.
And so that's why I started with the school counselor, guidance counselor track, but quickly realized, and I think this is part of my career ambitions as well as just my personal innate personality, is immediately I knew that I wasn't going to be able to be successful because I saw all the broken pieces of the system and was like, I got to do more.
And wow.
And for me, it was hard because I really liked working directly with students.
Right.
But I felt as though I could make a larger impact if I went more at the more macro level.
Right.
And so that's what I did.
Well, happy that you've done this work. I had the pleasure and the honor to watch you present here at the Safety Conference. And of course, Strictly Education is on location at the Safety Conference once again. I think I get my best hosts from this conference. I'm so happy that you're here. But there's a lot of discussion now on mental health. And since we opened school from the pandemic several years ago, those conversations have increased. Why is there a sudden surge in the conversations that we're having around mental health, especially with children, that we've never had before? Or are we making a bigger deal than it needs to be?
Well, absolutely, it's not a bigger deal than it needs to be. I can wholeheartedly sit here and say that we are in the middle of a youth mental health crisis.
Wait, did you say a mental health crisis?
Yes.
A youth mental health crisis.
That is correct. Several big health organizations have already labeled that. The CDC, the Surgeon General, several have stated that there is a youth mental health crisis. And what we see from the data is that after the pandemic, we saw a surge in mental health incidents. And it really, in my opinion, it really stems from that period of isolation, that period of uncertainty. Families, some were, not working from home. And there was really this unsettling moment of like, what are we doing? And for me as a professional, it was like a blessing and a curse, because for me it was like, finally we're gonna spotlight this, right? And then you started to see, the teachers are having problems too. They couldn't adjust with the online learning, and those issues were already there, but the pandemic really shined a light on it. And for someone who's passionate about it, it really gave us the opportunity to say, you see it now because we had this terrible thing that we, as a society, we had to move through. But these were things that were already there.
They were already there.
They were already there. Mm-hmm.
Right. And so you talked about shining the light on it, but do you believe that each and every year this crisis is increasing?
I do. I mean, I think from the data we know that it's not increasing, in huge numbers, but we know that it's steadily kind of staying where we are.
Okay.
The one positive thing I will say that we're seeing is that this generation of youth, we're seeing a decrease in alcohol and substance use.
Really?
Which is interesting. So marijuana rates are down, alcohol use is down. So that is, I think an interesting trend. But what we are seeing instead is we're seeing increase in vaping, and we're seeing an increase in prescription opioid use.
Yeah, I'm hearing that from superintendents across the country.
Yeah, and so we're seeing that. But, as a whole, I think with the increase, right, of social activity online, with a decrease in connectedness, an increase in isolation, that we're going to continue to see these trends go up until, we put measures in place to better.
Yeah. And we both kind of like huffed, right? Because I work with students, I've been working with students for 3 decades plus. You've worked with students, and you work with students in a different capacity. Many of our students have watched the murder of George Floyd, the murder of Charlie Kirk, people arguing, fighting on social media sites that actually give them the recipe for committing suicide. They're watching so much on social media. What role do you think social media plays in the trauma that children are experiencing today?
Yeah. Whew. So let me first start on talking about trauma in general. I mean, we know that more youth are experiencing trauma at earlier ages. 2/3 of youth will experience at least one traumatic event by the time they're 16.
Wow.
That's
Wow.
correct. Yeah. But the interesting thing and what research is starting to tell us is that with this increase in access to body cam footage, cell phone footage, media, I mean, you even see on CNN this footage that's played over and over and over and over and over again, that these, and it's everybody too. It's not just the kids, it's the adults too. We're being re-traumatized every time we're not supposed to see those things, right? We're not supposed to see that sort of thing. And so the access to that front and center footage is just as if we were there in person experiencing it.
But we're constantly being bombarded with that. We're looking at body cam footage of, someone being tossed out of a car and all the other things that are just going on in the world, all the ills that are going on in the world. Everyone has a cell phone and they're recording it, but our children are watching it and they're being bombarded with it. Like you, I do share the concern of those, of that trauma being played out, even in school.
Yeah.
At home.
Absolutely. I mean, it's twofold. It's a desensitization of it. We're so accustomed to it now that it doesn't even elicit that same response. So there's a desensitization, but then in addition to it, it's just the total access. Like you mentioned, seeing some of these things now, we can see it from different angles. We can see it from different, different cell phones that are watching the same thing, right? And it's just this overabundance of in our face presentation of unnatural things that especially our young people should be seeing.
Right.
Yeah.
And I know we're using the word trauma. And in your presentation, I thought it was really interesting because you distinguish trauma, misbehavior, mental health challenges. Can you just speak to the Strictly Education audience about the difference between the three? Because I don't want to use those words without just having clarity into how we're using them.
Yeah, and I think it's important, right? Because it gets muddy. It gets very muddy to know the difference and distinguish between them. But certainly, so misbehavior, this can be just, behaviors that disrupt the classroom or that maybe disrupt the traditional setting for a child that is observable, right? We see it, they do something. Part of it is a natural part of adolescence and kind of figuring out where you are in the world and kind of that decision making. And some of it is just part of the, it's a little bit normal, whereas what we're seeing though with trauma, right? Trauma, because young people are coming and having experienced some of these traumatic events, the behaviors that are displayed to externalize what they're feeling about the trauma looks very similar to the average misbehavior. So one thing I hear a lot is like, okay, Kate, Miss Berg, how do I know that the angry outburst in the classroom isn't normal teenage behavior or an indication of something very traumatic and serious that might be going on? And it is very muddy. It's hard to distinguish. And so I always, these are my tips. These aren't, black and white. These aren't by any means, tips that you should live by. But there are a few things that you consider that kind of crosses it over into that there's a potential concern for mental health.
Wow.
And those are, does that young person's individual behavior, is it deviating from that? So if you typically have a child that is gregarious and engaged, has a lot of friends, and they suddenly become withdrawn and sullen, that is a deviation from their individual behavior. But if you have a student who's quiet and reserved, and they're quiet and reserved, That's not the deviation, right? Because that's their
That's
typical
their
behavior.
typical behavior.
So we can't always look at it in these kind of broad strokes.
Right.
We have to look at the individual student.
Right.
And what is that, and kind of look at the data that behavior is telling us. And then it's that deviation, but it also has to be in a pattern. It can't be an isolated incident,
Right.
because we know there are things that happen. There might
Right.
be something that happened over the weekend,
Right.
right? Maybe there was a family fight over the weekend, and the child comes and they're, maybe sullen, or they're experiencing that. And yeah, does that child maybe need support? Absolutely. But we're not crossed over into the concern yet, because it needs to be a repeated event, or an intensification of that.
Yeah. So I'm a classroom teacher. I teach, I don't know, second grade maybe. So second graders, I wouldn't expect to see mental health challenges with children of that age. At what age do children begin to display mental health challenges?
I think it's a complex answer. It really is that individual child. What I would say is you need more information.
Okay.
You need more data to determine what is truly going on. It could be potentially something that they're modeling at home, or modeling, something that they're modeling or they're seeing, and that is how they are, expressing themselves. It could be something like that. It could be a behavioral concern or condition. We do know that there are, young as early as, 3 to 5 that can have.
Wait, a 3-year-old? Wow.
Yeah. So
Wow.
I don't know if I subscribe to that.
Yeah.
But that, according to some research,
Yeah.
that
Wow.
is, but so I think it's possible, right? It's possible. I think with the rise in trauma, the rise in things that were around us that are troubling, I think it could be, something that is new. I will tell you that the suicide rates of 5 to 11 was not something that we tracked,
Did you say 5? Suicide? 5?
Yeah, and it corresponds to a developmental period, right? It's kind of like that early child, it doesn't quite align with a K-12, but that would be your
Right.
kind of pre-K. Yeah. And we do see that, because we
I'm
have seen.
stunned. How does a 5-year-old think to want to take his or her life? I know the research is there. I just, they just got out of pull-ups. How does a 5, wow.
I don't think we know, to
Yeah.
be honest. I think
Yeah.
we're really in unprecedented waters.
Yeah.
And we're really trying to navigate it. But one thing we do know for sure is that these are presenting earlier.
They're presenting earlier. So how do these traumas, misbehaviors, these mental health challenges impact how a child functions, how a child learns, how a child socializes? Can you just talk a little bit about that?
This is something I'm very passionate about, because I think there's a misconception where, we might see a student who is disruptive or defiant or disengaged from class, and there's an assumption that, they're not interested in school, or they, something like that. And truly, the biology says that it's more than that. We know that when young people his brain is entered into a repeated stress state, that the part of the brain that does decision making, that does focus, processing, critical thinking, shrinks. And there are other parts of the brain that focus more on these big feelings, and because if you think about it, a young person who's experiencing trauma, they're concerned with where am I going to sleep tonight? Where am I going to eat tonight? I'm worried about my mom or dad. I'm worried about this. And they just don't have the capacity to process information in a classroom.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it is.
So speaking about this classroom, many teachers are not trained on identifying those mental health challenges and will likely reduce it to this child has a behavior issue, as opposed to understanding the deep rootedness of this, right? What do you think America's schools should do in order to better train teachers on how to identify these challenges and not mistaken them for something else?
So first off, I'll tell you that classroom management misbehavior in the classroom is one of the top reasons why teachers are leaving the profession.
That's right.
And they also feel like they don't have the supportive services to help them.
That is correct.
So there definitely has been a shift in a role as an educator. I want to say it's no longer, right, I go in, I teach my class, I prepare lesson plans. That's my role. It really has shifted. And I have a lot of empathy for that, because I think what teachers, all staff really, I'm not even going to just say teachers, I mean literally all staff, they are experiencing this shift of, well, now I'm a counselor, I'm a listener, I have all these other roles. And it's an unfortunate thing because I can understand the impact that could have on a teacher, their secondary traumatic stress and those things.
Absolutely.
However, it is where we are. And so I do feel like educator preparation programs, districts need to train teachers so that they have the skills to better manage that, better discern between the behaviors, so they can appropriately respond and meet the needs of those students. Very similar to how you would meet the needs of a student who is struggling academically. Yeah.
So it's more than just a teacher. Though the teacher has to be in a school that has a climate to want to address the mental health issues, because he or she cannot just isolate that to their classroom, right? There has to be a culture and a climate for that. What can schools do to have a culture that is more responsive to those challenges of students? What can we do today, but on a shoestring budget?
Yeah.
Because that's the issue. Where's the funding for all of this, right? During COVID, schools received an abundance of funding, some of which was used for mental health concerns, but all of a sudden that funding ended. So what can schools do?
Difficult.
Oh, it's yes. Oh, absolutely. So what can schools do to create this climate that is responsive to these mental health challenges or to the trauma that children might be experiencing, or these new behavior patterns that children are experiencing? What could that look like?
Yeah, and it's one of my favorite things to talk about, because if you think about a school building, and when you enter into a school building, what is that feeling that you generate when you walk into a school building? Does it feel good? Does it feel comfortable? As a parent, do I feel good, leaving my child here for 8+ hours a day? Does it feel good? Does it feel good for the kid?
Right.
Does he or she feel safe? Do they feel free to be themselves and all those things? And unfortunately, I think it can be difficult to create that climate. It definitely takes leadership and vision. And one of the things that I love about our conversation is you can always tell who gets it, right? And they get it and they understand the importance of it. And so I'll start off with that, creating that culture and climate. So I've seen schools that, instead of conference rooms where they bring parents into, it's a couch and a table, you'd be sitting down at dinner or at home. These are these small things that don't take a lot of money that can really make an impact. And then in addition, I think you can work towards classroom culture, right?
Yeah.
And my suggestion would be, work with your students to create that culture. It could be a co-constructed thing. What do we want our classroom to be like? What rules will we have? And that really empowers them to really think about, oh my gosh, this is my classroom. I'm proud of this classroom. I want to be a part of this. This sense of belonging. And so some of those, kind of basic routines and, rules and things you can set, it can really help with that. Yeah. But truly, if you want to create a full school culture of empathy, connectedness, belonging, it has to be a full scale. Everyone buys in and everyone believes in it.
That's very, very true. There are quite a few schools across America that were intentional about creating like a sensory space in the school. So if a child may need a bit of a timeout to just self-regulate, they can go to this space and they can actually come back. There are teachers who actually create a space in the classroom. Maybe be a bean bag. It might be a place where they can kind of fidget with certain things, or maybe play with an iPad for a minute, or just listen to music so that they can self-regulate. Those things don't cost a lot of money. It just requires you to be a little bit of a creative thinker, think outside of the box, right? So that's very helpful. I want to go into discipline, being that we're talking about schools. There are traditional schools, then there are some non-traditional. And I think we just talked a little bit about some of the non-traditional discipline versus traditional discipline. And you spoke about that in your presentation today, and that really struck me. What's the difference, and what really works in 2025? Not in 1942 when you had the ruler hit you across the knuckles, right? Not that, but what works today?
Yeah, I mean, again, love this topic. I could talk to you all day about it. So here's what we know. Traditional discipline policies of, out of school suspension, in school suspension, although they might reconcile an immediate punishment or consequence, what we know is long-term, it doesn't change the behavior.
Does not.
So if I'm a student and I am skipping class and I get caught for this infraction, and then my punishment is I get 3 days out of school, you've just negatively reinforced my ultimate behavior, which is I don't want to be in class.
Absolutely.
And so then what the consequences of that are, then they are home with, they're unsupervised, they're losing instruction time, which they're going to get further behind, which again, it cascades, and they return and the behavior isn't modified in any way. The needs aren't met, there was no identification, and a lot of times they don't even discuss the behavior that caused them to get the punishment. I'm not saying all schools do that, but a lot of times it's, you did this thing, suspended.
Correct. And that's the traditional.
Yeah, I would say that's kind of more the traditional. And I would say a lot of schools are moving towards this positive, restorative approach, which takes more intention, it takes more time. However, if you can teach the skills of the student of why I'm going to call it an infraction. I don't even love these terms because I think they're, they have a negative connotation, but for the infraction of what they, the rule that they broke, if you can teach them why it was not the appropriate response or it was not the appropriate choice, you're going to get much further in correcting the behavior than you will if you just send them out of your class and send them out to the world.
No, I totally agree with you, and I'm 100% for that. I'm also 100% for focusing on the positive behavior as opposed to spending the most times, focus on the negative behavior. And in speaking of that, I want to get into a phrase that many of us have heard, especially here in America, in our schools, and that is the school to prison pipeline. There are some who believe that doesn't really exist, and that some who have actually witnessed it in its existence. I, for one, know exactly what it looks like. It's a real thing. Why don't you tell the audience from your perspective, what is that and what does that look like? And is there truly a connection between how schools support students to the likelihood of they going into a prison system?
Sure. I mean, well, the data shows is that it is real. A student who is suspended or expelled for a discretionary offense, and I can tell you the top offenses are all nonviolent. 90% of them are nonviolent. So we're talking truancy, dress code violations, this big unknown called disrespect, and then some property damage, but they're all nonviolent offenses typically, is what the research shows. And if they are suspended or expelled for a discretionary offense such as that, they are 3 times more likely to be involved in the juvenile justice system within 1 year.
Wow.
So I think there's a lot of like, what message are we sending when you do something where the punishment doesn't fit the crime, right? And I'm using that loosely.
No,
right?
I got you.
Like,
right.
okay, I didn't go to school, but instead of assessing the situation and determining how the schools can support, I'm saying you did something wrong and you failed. And there's a message, and I think and then it turns into internal, self-talk of, I'm not a good kid, I'm a bad kid. And I think that perpetuates all those, behaviors. And then it's, what's the point? My school, why am I going to go back to school? They don't like me. They are out to, all the things are out to get me. And so what's the point? I'm just going to, and so there is research that shows that is a trend. And so these zero tolerance policies, these very exclusionary policies, have shown to trend in that way.
So is it your recommendation to school boards, to superintendents, school leaders, families, parents, community members, that we reevaluate this zero tolerance culture?
That would be my personal recommendation, because we know they don't work. I'm going to give you an example.
Please.
If we have a zero tolerance policy for certain dress code violations, let's say for dress code, you have to have your hair cut in a certain way. First of all, you're taking out the self-expression of a student who wants to identify in whatever way they want. And we should really be promoting that, because of all the reasons they're learning about themselves and they're trying to figure out who they are. But you're asking them to comply to a certain thing. And so if I'm a student and there was an incident, I believe is in Texas, where a middle school had, the image of a professional athlete, cut into his hair, and he was suspended. Nonviolent. Why are we doing that? Why are we sending the message that they aren't able to be self-expressing who they want to be? And if it doesn't fit in with that dress code policy, there's no wiggle room. So what I'm saying is, maybe they don't necessarily have to cast away. I mean, if I had an ideal world, I'd get rid of them. But what I think there needs to be more intentionality behind figuring out the so-called infraction and making sure that the consequence fits that particular thing.
Yeah. To suspend a child for wearing locks in his or her hair, for wearing braids, or expressing themselves with blue hair, pink hair. Breast Cancer Awareness Month, I want to wear my hair blue because, my grandma was diagnosed, and I want to show support. You should not be suspended from school. Like, I totally agree with you. And I think that the adolescent years, it's the opportunity for children to really get to know who they are and to express it. As long as it's done within certain confines and it's not offensive, then that's fine. But I also think, too, that schools can use this as an opportunity to bring children to the table when it comes to developing policies. They are the end users, and we don't ask students enough about what's good for them. And while we don't have to use everything they say, but I think it's important that they do have a voice, that they sit at the table to be a part of the policy development, because they're the ones who have to adhere to it. And I just think it's just a great idea. And it's also a missed opportunity when we don't give students an opportunity to sit at the table with us.
Yeah, absolutely. And what better way to get them on board?
Oh, yeah.
If they get to co-construct those, whatever rules, policies that they can be a part of.
Yeah.
Also, we're, putting all these things into place, and we don't even ask them if these are things that they want.
But I'll take it a step further. Not only do we not ask, a lot of times we don't even tell children what the expectations are. We assume that they are reading the code of conduct. We assume that they understand it.
Yes.
Right? And then when they misinterpret it or they misunderstand it, there's an infraction and you're out. I don't like suspending children as a superintendent. When superintendent hearings and suspensions come to me, it makes me nervous. I serve children of color. I serve children who are at a particular economic status. The last place my babies need to be is in the streets. The last place they need to be is someplace else, and not in one of my schools where they're safe, where they're loved, where they are appreciated, where they are embraced for who they are. And it bothers me that there are children who are constantly being put out. And like you said, then in their minds, they think, well, there's something wrong with me. They don't like me. And I've heard children say, this teacher doesn't like me, or the school doesn't like me. That's horrible for a child to enter a place where they spend most of their waking moments more than their own home, and to feel like they're not liked.
Yeah, I mean, the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, tells us the number one protective factor of young people is connectedness.
Talk to me about connectedness. Let's talk.
Yeah. So 100% hands down, all of these interventions that cost money. And what we know is that connectedness is the number one protective factor. So if kids are feeling connected to their school community, to their peers, to their teachers, to their activities, to their coursework, they are less likely to engage in risky sexual behaviors, substance use. I mean, the list goes on. They're less likely to engage in bullying because kids want to belong. If you think about it in the same way as a teen might want to join a gang, right? They're joining it for that sense of belonging. So if we can create that environment at a safe and supportive place such as school, they will thrive.
They will. On that same topic, let's talk about relationships. How important is that for children to have relationships with an adult in a school?
Oh my gosh. I think of all the things that a teacher could do, that would probably be my number one suggestion. I know it takes time, and I know it takes intentionality, but that can go so far.
Examples.
I mean, just as simple as what is that student's wants, needs, motivations, dislikes, can give you so much information to be able to support them in a way that suits them best. Again, similar to how you would do with their learning. What's their learning style, right? So if you can do that for them, you are giving them that connectedness, but you're also showing and demonstrating that you care and you have empathy for them as a human or as a person. You're not just a student in their class. It's much harder to do at high school level, right? Because you have several students that run through your day. But it is achievable, right? And actually, it can be as simple as learning a name.
Absolutely.
It can be as simple as learning a name. You might not even have the time to, have 5 minutes to interview each one.
Absolutely.
But even just as simple as learning a name.
Or as simple as, this child plays soccer. Hey, how was that game yesterday? Right? As something as simple as that, where you make that connection to the child. But relationships are super important. Relationships can help prevent catastrophes and incidents at a school. Children feel comfortable telling you about what's happening or what they believe could possibly happen. They can talk to someone who they believe is a responsible adult to guide them and give them the resources that they might need if they are having a mental health crisis or they're experiencing trauma.
Yes.
I mean, I just think it's just so very important. And guess what? Building a relationship with a student doesn't cost a dime. It is not an expensive initiative.
Yep. And I also say too is that teachers, a lot of them are already doing that, right? They're already doing that. But what I think we could do more of is we can leverage these other trusted adults that are in the building that have these amazing relationships with students that we're not using enough. And I'm talking about the parent who pulls them out of class. I'm talking about the cafeteria woman who makes sure they have that apple on their plate when they go through, the bus driver who says good morning every day. Why are we not leveraging those people who have an amazing relationship with students? They can be another trusted adult in their system of support.
I love that you mentioned the bus driver because people take for granted how important that bus ride is. The bus driver is the first person to see our kids in the morning. And guess what? They're the last to see our children in the afternoon. Their role is so important. And a simple good morning, how are you? Great hat. Look at those sneakers. Goes such a long way for a kid.
Such a long way.
It kind of determines their day at the beginning.
Absolutely.
You have a rough school bus ride, you might have a rough day. It's going to determine your day at school.
Absolutely. And I've seen that in action many times. Yeah. And it could be anyone. It could be facilities. It could be a coach. It could be whomever, the librarian.
Yeah.
And let's empower those folks to say, you too can build a relationship with a young person. Yes. And just because maybe your role doesn't designate that you're the teacher or whatever, doesn't mean you can't build those relationships. And in addition to that, how amazing would it be if then those folks who now have had the tools to build relationships can then do that in their own community with their neighborhood kids, with their nieces, with their nephews, with all that. And then now we truly have created this community of care.
That's absolutely true. I've seen where even police officers who are assigned to a particular neighborhood actually get to know the kids. They go into the park, they'll go into the rec center where the kids are to get to know them, hang out with the kids. We are intentional in our school district to bring the police into our school where they can actually see them in their uniform and see that, hey, this is another responsible adult, and they're not necessarily your enemy, right? But these are like responsible adults who are in the schools with you, and they see the officers and they know the officers by name. And what's also amazing, the officers know them by name. Yeah. And it's a positive relationship. Those things are really, really important.
Super important, hugely impactful. I love that you do that. And those are the things I think we could be doing more of.
Yeah. I have to give a shout out to my teachers at Westbury Union Free School District. If y'all watching, shout out to you. And I'll say why. Because just hearing you, who I respect in the field of mental health awareness and all those things, to hear the importance of relationships. And when you were speaking about some of the examples of things that people can do to foster those relationships, I saw so many of my Westbury teachers. I saw my principals, I saw my coaches, I saw my deans, because they have those relationships with the kids. Like they know the kids, they know the families, they know the siblings, right? It's amazing. And we also have a very seasoned staff where they know the family members. Like I taught his mother and he's now in my school, right? Yeah. And so that matters, which is, I feel blessed to lead a school district that values relationships. So I have to give them a shout out. It's just amazing to watch and to hear you sort of affirm what I see in my school district. So thank you for that.
That's amazing. And I would love to, come visit and see that.
DC, the hop, skip, jump on the train, 4 hours.
I would love it. Yeah. And that is amazing. And I think the more that we can, similar to how we do with young people, we can give positive praise for that because they are already doing that a lot of times. Yeah. I just think they don't realize what it is, right? And so if you can highlight that, give them the shout out, give them that extra appreciation, for that, then, we know they're doing so much more.
Yeah.
And so just giving that little shout out, I think, is very important.
So the adults in the schools need a little love too.
Yeah, they do.
We talk about the children, right? We talk about giving the children so much. The adults need a little bit of love too. Anything you can speak about just helping the adults, because they need it too.
Yes, 100%. And actually, normally when I would talk about youth mental health, I would always first start with make sure you're taking care of yourself. Because the emotional burden that we are asking for them to take on while not even addressing their own mental health, to me, is criminal, or it's just awful. And I feel very guilty if I don't mention that. Because it's that the thing that we are saying in COVID, like, you have to put on your mask first. It's like, it's cliche at this point, but it's certainly true. And if adults aren't well and they're not feeling their best, how are we expecting the kids that are under their care and supervision and teaching to be able to respond well? So we really need to take care of our teachers. Teachers and staff, like, they are incredible for what they do every day.
Oh, we honor them as much as we can, and we should. Our nation's teachers, right? They support and partner with families in raising children.
It's crazy.
I know.
And I've seen a lot of school districts prioritize staff wellness. I mean, we, in addition to our school program that trains staff in how to support students, we have an additional program called NTA at Work, where it teaches how staff can support each other as colleagues.
Yeah.
Because, in that you have your work bestie, right? Your work wife, your work husband.
Oh, yeah.
And you go to that person when you're having a good day, when you're having a bad day.
Oh,
so
yeah.
similar.
Oh, yeah.
Let's equip those individuals with the skills to support each other. And so they're not also feeling isolated. I'm dealing with this very challenging XYZ, right. And maybe I don't want to talk about it because I don't want people to think I'm not a good teacher or something like that. And it's like, hey, we are all human. We are all going through things.
Right.
We are caring for children. We are caring for our aging parents. We have a lot going on. So how can we can support this entire community? We just got to be helping everybody. Everybody got all hands on deck.
All hands on deck. And we all need it. You're absolutely right. I want to get back to budgets, because you just talked about how we can help the staff as well, principals. They need love.
Yes,
they need
they
help
do.
too. They need
yes,
a lot.
They do.
They are taking on everyone's stress.
Yes,
from
they
their
are.
teachers to
Yes,
their
they
students, even the parents and the families.
Yes.
They're taking on everyone's,
Yes,
right?
they are.
So we've got to give some love to our principals and our assistant principals who are out there, our school leaders. But we struggle, and I know we talked a little bit about that, but we struggle with the budgets, with budget constraints. We struggle with trying to figure it out. And I've always said, if you want to learn a lot about a school district, take a look at what they budget and what they prioritize. How can schools prioritize through budgeting mental health awareness, or just resources for mental health?
Sure. I mean, it's difficult. I am not going to lie. It is very difficult right now, with different programs, being cut. But what I will say is, if you can, and it's difficult, but if you can take the time to research not only the resources available within your school district, but the resources that are available in your community, I think you might find that there's more than you originally thought. Now, I think in addition, there are other, like, our school program is free to any school or district in the country.
So what is your program?
So our program is Notice, Talk, Act at School. It's a free mental health training for all K-12 staff, and it's free, and we're so blessed to be able to offer this at no cost through our funding, through the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services.
How will someone find that?
Oh,
I'm sure there are people who are interested after hearing you today.
Yes.
Interested in learning more. How will people find that?
Yes. So you can go to our foundation website, which is apaf.org/schools.
Okay.
You'll find our programs there. But yeah, you can Google us too. We can also give you the information as well as our flyer. It's completely free. So I would definitely say, where you can save money, use those free programs.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, it takes time, but finding those resources available. And it's hard too, because you have to update it too, right?
Yes.
Because the last thing you want to do is give a parent a resource and the program is no longer.
Right.
So it can be tough, but I would say, even if you do it quarterly, semi-annually, to just curate a list.
Yes.
And you can break it up by different domain, right? So here's, healthcare options, mobile clinic
Right.
here, and you can break it out. And that way, it's not this mad dash to find it and research it on your own. You have a curated school list, or you have a curated district list that
awesome.
You can share.
That's great. Mm-hmm. That's great. Frederick Douglass once said, "It is easier to build strong children than to repair broken men." What does that mean to you?
Well, first of all, it gave me goosebumps.
I'm sorry.
No, I love goosebumps. Are you kidding? I can't think of truer words spoken. Our young people are the future. And I wholeheartedly believe that we could be doing more. We could be doing more to support them in all areas of schooling, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think it's the fault of schools. I don't think it's the fault of superintendents. I think we just haven't prioritized education, mental health as we should. And absolutely, if we are able to course correct students, there's time. They're resilient.
Yes.
They're very resilient. But I think once the development period ends, it's going to be more difficult.
Right, but not impossible.
It's not impossible. I don't believe anything is impossible. Right. You can be 85 years old, and I think it's possible. So I don't believe it's impossible, but I think it's going to be easier.
Yeah.
If we do it earlier.
Sure.
Earlier identification, earlier connection to resources, more supports within the school. That is where families get services.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to find services in the community. I have to take time off work. I have to maybe find transportation. Let's have the school be the hub of resources. And if we can do that, and we can create the positive culture that we discussed, now we're creating a microcosm of a positive environment where kids can thrive.
Yeah. I can't help but to think, some of the challenges that adults present. What if they were addressed when they were younger, right? And so, just, how they respond to, things that may not make them happy, how they communicate to people, what triggers that make them perform the way they do. Could it be something that was not addressed in their childhood and is presenting in adulthood? Okay, you look like you want to say something about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I firmly believe it, right? We talk about trauma and the weight of the trauma, and I didn't coin this term, but as the invisible backpack, right? If we think about a child that's coming into your classroom and they're wearing an invisible backpack, we don't know that the weight on their shoulders that they're carrying every day. But guess what? Those kids grow up to be adults.
Yeah.
And they carry invisible briefcases or invisible, I don't know, laptop carriers, whatever it may be. And there are a lot of adults who have childhood trauma that's unresolved.
Yeah.
Not to their fault, that our generation wasn't as open to, right? There was more stigma, less access. It just wasn't as accepted as it is now. We need to take advantage of the fact that this young generation, they are so open and free about talking about their mental health. Yeah. And we need to take a note from them. Let's heal together, right?
I remember when I was in the classroom, and I remember during parent-teacher conference, I've always had a parent who was confrontational with me. And I could not for the life of me understand, why was this parent so confrontational? And I was very patient, still am patient, but I was a lot more patient then. And when I got into the heart and the root and the trigger, that parent hated school. Hated teachers, because teachers made that parent feel less than, devalued that person. So here I am, your child's teacher, and you were just like rude and nasty and just ready to fight, but for no reason, because of that experience that was not addressed as a child. You grew up with that would that be considered trauma?
I think so.
Yeah, with that same trauma.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And I experienced that too. Very early on in my career.
Yeah.
I remember we had a parent-teacher conference for a student, and there was like 8 people around a conference room and this one parent. And I thought, how intimidating is this? Like, here we are with all the power, and basically we're telling you all the things wrong with your kid. And how, and how can you not take that personally? It's your baby, maybe you're taking it like, oh, I could have been doing more, right? And so I think I think that does carry through, because they might have had a bad experience with their school, and it does carry through. Again, there are intentional ways that you can go about and turning that around to say, we want you involved. We want to make you a part of this. We don't want to tell you what to do. We want you to co-create with us.
Yeah.
And bring them along, create that space around the coffee table. And not only are you going to get much more, cooperation and engagement, but support from the child overall, because they now have had this positive experience at their child's school.
Yes.
And they're gonna help support, help now it's, that teacher, like that, that they had that conferences. Oh, you better listen to her, because I had this positive experience.
I had this positive experience.
They just want to know their kids are okay when they drop them off.
Yeah, and I always recommend to teachers, start with the positive.
Yes.
Start with the positive and end with the positive. Because oftentimes the last thing we hear is the thing we remember most.
Yes.
Right? And so if you start with the positive, let families know areas of concern and how we can work together to address it, and then end with positive, end with hope.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would even say the first meeting should, like you said, just be positive. I want to get to know your student. I want to demonstrate that I'm interested in learning all the parts of your child. That way, the next time we meet, I'm going to help you understand areas where we can grow. And I think it's all about the phrasing too, right?
100% is about the phrasing.
And I think, most teachers know that, but that can definitely help too.
Yeah. Oh, it's all about the phrasing. And we have to remember that we're talking about someone else's child.
Yeah.
Each parent sends you their very best. That is their child. That's their baby. That's their child. They want to hear something positive about their child, no matter what. And there's something positive in each child. Even the children who may display, behaviors that are less than pleasant in our classroom, there's something that we can say positive about every child. And I think every parent deserves to hear that. Fair enough. You have been such an amazing host, eye-opener. I know there are tons of teachers, leaders, administrators, parents, school board members who are watching this show and just really hoping that people are reflecting on their own practices, reflecting on their own school environments, and how we can make these safe spaces, safe environments for our children to be who they are, right? To feel happy when they come into our spaces. In your closing with me today, which I'm so sad that it's going to end. This has been such a great discussion.
It has.
You're amazing.
You're amazing.
Keep doing what you're doing. We need you. We need you in public education.
But we need leaders like you as well.
Thank you. Thank you. In closing, what advice would you give leaders, educators, on ways in which they could create safe environments, safe spaces for children and families, immediate ways? What's your advice?
Well, my very first advice would be, it takes time.
Okay.
It's not going to happen overnight. If you're going to truly create a culture of safety and security, you have to build trust. And so you have to give your students grace. You have to give yourself grace.
Can you say that one more time? You have to give who grace?
You have to give your students grace first and foremost, because they're young children, and
you also have to
give yourself grace.
That part.
100%, you have to give yourself grace. Not everything is going to work for every kid,
right? And
that's okay. You can keep trying, but you got to give yourself grace.
Yes,
you have to give yourself. It's truly hard out there, and so my advice is stay the course, even when it gets difficult, and rely on each other as much as you can. Talk to your colleagues, what's working, what's not working. Be open, be curious, stay curious. And at the end of the day, if all you do is check in on kids to make sure how they're doing, that's enough.
That's enough. That's awesome. Thank you so much. I am pretty certain that there are people in the audience who are wondering, how do they contact you to come into their schools to provide training, or to talk to them more about the free resource that you just shared, or just to maybe just talk to the school district about ways in which they can create these safe environments for children. How will they contact you?
Oh my gosh, I will give you my email. I will talk to all the schools. It's my favorite thing to do. No, and I will share, we have over 200 trainers.
Wow.
We have trainers in 21 states. Wow. We're continuing to build that out. That is my goal. I want there to be a ready to go trainer in every local community. So if they're ready to take that step in building that we have someone available. But certainly check out the website.
Which is again?
At apaf.org/schools.
Okay.
And we have some information about the program there, so they can definitely take a look.
And we'll be sure to put that on the screen as well.
That'd be great, yeah. And just reach out. I am more than happy to talk with anyone about this issue and connect you with resources.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Healthy minds, healthy bodies, healthy thoughts, healthy outcomes. That's the goal that we have for our beautiful children, our nation's children. And I think when we address these issues early on, we continue to build a healthy future for our nation, right?
And I'm optimistic because, like I said, I think our generation really has it in them to talk about it and achieve it.
This generation rocks.
And support it. It's adult. We got to get on board. We got to move on the back of the train.
We do. And sometimes we have to let go to let them lead.
Yes.
Right?
100%. I love that. Let them go.
We have to let go to let them lead.
Yes.
They are the future. They are the right. And this generation, they're a lot more outspoken than my generation because I'm older than you. So
not by much.
But I am. But this generation, they're a lot more outspoken. They know what they want.
I know. I love
it. They
know
know what
much.
they want. And they're not afraid to express that.
They are like out there.
Oh my God. They are researchers. They are absolutely amazing. And a shout out to our girls, because our girls are amazing, right? The leaders. Yes. And a lot of these kids are just natural leaders, right? They really are. We just have to give them an opportunity.
Agreed. And we have to give them the support necessary to reach their maximum potential. And we have to also give them the exposure. And we have to give them the model so that they can see what they can become. Yeah.
That's important. You are amazing. I just can't wait to connect with you again.
I know.
I want you to come out to Westbury and see what we're doing.
I want to, and we can bring some resources. We could put some calming spaces in.
Yes.
We could do a little.
Let's do that.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do that. And then what we'll do is we'll bring that back to Strictly Education as a follow-up.
Sure.
I would love that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time.